Welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by the man who's keeping the Total Soccer Show humming while I'm in England. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello, my friend. I'm keeping it humming. I'm keeping it spicy, is what I'm going to say, because I bought a Blenheim ginger ale, which is either very hot or not, and I thought I bought not, and I did not. So that was the way I began this show, was you introducing me as I struggled to deal with that one.
You did ginger ale face.
A little bit. All right.
So we're not going to talk Liverpool Man United today because you've already talked about Liverpool Man United with a very special guest.
That is true. And also because genuinely you asked when I gave you the rundown of what I wanted to talk about, you seemed surprised that I didn't want to talk about Liverpool United. I would happily talk about Liverpool, I think, but United, it just feels like it's the same old conversation, right? It feels like, oh, Mourinho's still there and things don't seem to be working and everybody seems sad. That's about the summary, right?
Did Fellaini have a shot off target?
Yes, he did. Did he hit a steward? Yes, he did. Let's just move on. Let's talk about happier things, at least for you. Let's talk about Wolves' 2-0 win over Bournemouth because you were there.
I sure was. It was my first, I think it was my first game of the Nuno era that I managed to go and see at Molineux. I got my tickets to Wolves Bournemouth and I've been excited for about a month to go and see this game. And yes, Wolves delivered. I even got a Raul Jimenez goal.
There we go. I know. I was surprised to see it for a variety of reasons. But you said it's your first game of the Nuno era. It's also your first game since they went back to the Premier League. Was the atmosphere different since last you were there? Was the vibe different around the team?
Yes, there's definitely more just optimism and expectation, basically. There's less of the, we'll probably lose again, won't we, Phil? You know what I mean? It's more like we expect to win, which is really a new vibe in the Premier League.
And did that optimistic, enthusiastic vibe extend to your wife, Shannon, who was there with you?
She was half interested in her first Molineux experience and half terrified of the weather. So I don't know if you know about this or if you've seen footage of the game, but the weather was horrendous. I think I posted a screenshot on Twitter of the BBC's weather report for the day, and it was the weather report was just big letters: rain, snow, freezing rain.
Fun.
Which is sort of the perfect. It's almost a comedy trio, right? Of weather phrases, and that really what it is. What it was. The real feel during the game was 15 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oof.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for that conversion. I appreciate it. Second of all, so were you all?
I haven't changed my phone over, so I'm still getting temperature in Fahrenheit.
All right, that works. But did you all make it the whole game? Were you able to exist in 15 degrees?
Yes. Well, mostly Shannon was a trooper, and she was just in it to win it all the way until Cavallero's second goal to make it 2-0 in the 92nd minute, the secret minutes. So we didn't sort of start to leave until the game was sealed.
And I'm going to assume that you jumped up and celebrated. I'm assuming there was some cheering. What about Shannon? Yeah. What's her reaction when the goals happen? Is she equally caught up in the moment, or is she a bit more reserved in her celebrations?
So she said, I've quizzed her on this to make sure I've recorded her experiences so I can share with you, share with our listeners. She loved when a goal happened or when anything Wolves positive happened because it gave her an excuse to clap and jump up and down, which is very good for keeping hands warm and keeping blood flow going. So that was her genuine takeaway. She was willing Wolves to do good things, so she had an excuse to jump around.
So that's good. I appreciate the practicality of that approach. Speaking of approaches, you being there in person, were there any things that stood out to you about Wolverhampton, watching them in person, or even watching Nuno on the sidelines, since we don't get to see very much of him aside from when he's celebrating or screaming at the fourth official? Did anything stand out to you about Wolves' performance against Bournemouth?
No, I'll be honest, I'm not a good analyst for this game because, one, I was sort of there as a fan and I really had that sort of just deeply passionate experience, which is a little different. And two, our seats were in the bottom right corner in the second row. So I did not have what you would call a tactical cam. It was more of a corner flag cam.
And and so were you where the first half goal was scored or the second half goal?
Yes. Yeah, so the Jimenez goal, he was celebrating, I don't know, 15 yards away from us.
But did he run to your side or the other side?
He to my side.
Okay,
not all the way.
Now I know where you are. All right.
Yeah.
And was that a cross or a shot for his goal?
Yes, I've seen the replay match of the day, and it was definitely a sort of low-driven cross, across the box for Jimenez at the far post.
Oh, that's interesting, because I think the commentator in the moment said, that's almost certainly a shot, but it falls fortuitously to Jimenez.
well, sometimes the commentator in the moment is wrong.
This is very true. One other question for you then. I'm wondering this one. If I told you 6 months ago that Wolves would be a point behind Manchester United 17 games into the season, would you have assumed that United were having a terrible season or that Wolves were having a very good season?
I think I was. Oh no, we weren't really prepared for the Man United Mourinho badness this year,
Not
right?
so much.
So yeah, if you'd have told us we were a point behind Man United, I think maybe we're in the Champions League spots.
I mean, there's still time. You never know. But that's exciting because I know it's been up and down, mostly down for Wolves. So to have them back, I'm glad you got to experience it. Does it make you want to stay a day later so you can be there for? Is it Liverpool coming to town?
Oh, Liverpool's on Friday. There was just no tickets going for that one. For some reason, Liverpool were more of a draw than
No,
Bournemouth.
Get out of here! Really?
Just a little.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add on Wolves v Bournemouth?
Yeah, I mean, I do have a tactical take after watching bits and pieces afterwards that I think sort of explains why Wolves sort of keep overperforming and underperforming. I mean, I know they're on this great run now where they've won 3 in a row, but there's a patch before that where they were losing to, say, Cardiff and Huddersfield. And I think it seems to me that Wolves have started to struggle whenever they're the team that has the most of the ball and they're playing against a team that's looking to, maybe sit back and then counter-attack. I think Wolves play into the hands of a team like Cardiff or Huddersfield in that, like Huddersfield would press at midfield and win the ball and go, and Wolves couldn't handle it. I think the reason Wolves are able to beat a team like Bournemouth is that Bournemouth want to play football, right? They want to move the ball around. They want to pass the ball around. And that almost plays into Wolves' hands because then Wolves can sit a little deeper and counter. Or if you watch all the build up to that first goal, Bournemouth had a throw in. And I think it was Callum Wilson who took the throw in, got the ball back. And then when he was under pressure, instead of just going long, like a team that didn't value the ball as much as Bournemouth did, he tried to play it backwards to his defenders. And that's what turned the ball over for Wolves to start the attack. So basically, when Wolves play against a more possession-oriented team, I think it suits them better. Okay,
that makes sense. And that's probably the better scenario to be dealing with as opposed to we beat all the bad teams and then we get destroyed by the good teams. Yeah. You'd probably rather have it be we can actually counterattack and play well against the bigger teams. Then we just have to figure out how to have sustained possession and opportunities against smaller teams. Yeah, and it keeps things nice and unpredictable as well, so it's worth tuning in every week. Actually, yeah, speaking of unpredictable, which one stressed you out more? Helder Costa's breakaway, where he probably should have squared it, but instead shot wide, or when Stanislas hit the post with his free kick? Which one gave you more concern in that moment? Definitely the Stanislas hitting the post. But that weirdly gave Shannon a chance. She thought that was a clapping opportunity. I see. And she turned out to be the only one in our stand clapping that Bournemouth hit the post. So that was like her one misjudgment, but she got to keep her hands warm, so it was okay. All right. And she was forgiven by those around you? Yeah, I think everybody was too taken with the game. All right. Oh, can I share one other observation that Shannon shared? As she's not really an American sports fan, but she was really, really pleased that there were no in-game announcers. So she thought there might be somebody, like sponsored advertisements and like announcements about what players are doing during the game. And she had this observation that without that, she was freer to focus on what was happening and almost just react to the crowd in terms of when the swell of noise was and what they were excited about. And she found it a much more engrossing experience than, the various like NFL or Major League Baseball type things that she's been to, where she says in the stadium that the announcer is talking too much and doesn't let you just focus on the game. Yeah, that makes sense. It's not quite the same, but I remember when I was younger, like going to my first college football game, and it happened to be one that was broadcast on TV, and it's such a slow process. And then if you go to a game where it's not broadcast and you don't have TV timeouts and the like, it is a much faster, more like fluid game where you can kind of track everything that's happening because you're not being made to arbitrarily wait to come back from a Papa John's commercial. And I imagine that's like a similar thing of, if you don't have a person kind of constantly interrupting the crowd noise and the atmosphere, it makes it that much more of an enjoyable experience. Yeah, and for me, I personally feel like American sports, especially say baseball and football, there's a lot of, okay, this is when it is, and then there's action for 10 seconds, and then it's like, okay, and now we stop, and and then you buy a hot dog or whatever. Where soccer is more of an ebb and flow type situation, right? So I personally enjoy the feeling of just being
engulfed in the ebb and flow and like losing yourself in the game a little bit. It's almost like meditating. You know what I mean? You sort of forget everything else and just like float into the game. So I think Shannon had a first experience of doing that.
I believe we're talking about mindfulness now. We've moved into the mindfulness portion of the Total Soccer Show.
Mindfulness at Molineux.
There we go. Now there is still a stadium announcer though, right? Because there is still that like 3 minutes of added time and like substitution for Wolverhampton. There's that person who makes those announcements, right?
Yes, there's just that, and they announced the goal scorer after he scored the goal and not in a sponsored way.
And here is my question. First of all, that's good. Second of all, I haven't been to a game in the Premier League or in England. I've only heard that announcer through the television broadcast, and I'm curious which one is more unintelligible: a person like the train conductor on a subway telling you what the next stop is, or the person telling you about substitutions and extra time.
Oh, it's actually the same person.
Okay. It's always just that, number 6. And it's like, okay.
There's a special school that they go to where they get taught to speak like that.
I think it's connected to the pilot school where they learn how to do the pilot voice. Today's cruising speed is going to be there we go. Yeah. Okay, cool. I like that there are occupational speech schools. That's very useful. I've heard of aviation English. I didn't know about the pilot talk. So that's good to know. It's good to know we've got that going on. Now, I'm assuming you used, like the straightforward English ways of getting tickets. But if people wanted to get tickets to, say, American sporting events, Daryl Grove, what service might they be able to use?
Oh, they could maybe use today's sponsor, which is SeatGeek, because buying tickets to sporting events and other live events used to be complicated. But now, just a few taps on your phone, you can buy and sell tickets to any event in the United States.
You sure can. I was looking it up. There are already tickets on sale for the U.S. women's national team friendly against Australia at Dick's Sporting Goods Park on April 4th. That would be one of their World Cup tune-up games. So if you're in the area and looking to watch some high-quality women's soccer, because it will be, because those two teams will, there's a chance they meet in the knockout round, I would say.
That's a big test for the United States as well, right?
Absolutely. So you've got tickets for that. But for all of your sporting needs, I talked about the Washington professional football team last week. They did win away, but now they're going to be hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. So if you are a Redskins fan who enjoys pain, you could buy tickets to that game. That could be fun.
Why, the Eagles good?
No, just the Redskins are terrible.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
It's all relative, right?
Yes. I think everyone is good compared to the Washington franchise.
The good news is you can also get a discount on your tickets. If you enter the promo, go to the settings tab, enter the promo code TSS, you will get $10 off your first ticket purchase via SeatGeek. That's TSS in the settings to get $10 off your first SeatGeek ticket purchase.
So thank you very much to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's episode. Remember, folks, SeatGeek, life's an event. We've got the tickets.
All right, Tyler, what do you want to talk about next? I feel like you're sort of, I know I introduced the show, but I feel like you're driving this wagon.
Well, now that I've recovered from ginger burn, I think we should maybe talk about Arsenal's defeat to Southampton.
Let's do so. All right, so 3-2 to Southampton. It was Hasenhüttl's second game in charge of Southampton, his first at St Mary's. I think this came as a surprise to Unai Emery.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, I sure do.
Which aspect of it do you think was surprising?
Well, actually, I think the biggest surprise or the biggest downside for Arsenal is the lack of centre-backs. I'm not sure how closely you've followed the story behind this game, but Emery was without, I haven't got the list off the top of my head, Mustafi and Socrates, both suspended, and then Rob Holding, I believe, is out for a long, long time. There's a lot of centre-backs missing. So we ended up with an Arsenal team that had Laurent Koscielny coming back from injury and starting, Granit Xhaka playing centre-back, which is a thing that would scare me if I was an Arsenal fan, and Stefan Lichtsteiner, who's really a fullback, an overlapping fullback, also playing centre-back. And I think it really told throughout the game. I think it affected Arsenal's performance in at least two different ways that I'm very willing to get into details with you if you like.
I would love to, because I thought you were taking it a different way and saying that maybe that Unai Emery wasn't prepared for Southampton to kind of buy into Hasenhüttl's philosophy this quickly. Because it seems like they did. But I'm with you that it was definitely an issue with the center backs. So let's go that route. What did you see? What made you think this was a bigger deal?
Well, the first and most basic thing is if you think of the three centre-backs, there's really just Southampton played a 3-4-2-1. So it was Danny Ings as a centre-forward with Armstrong and Nathan Redmond underneath him. And the first thing is that Danny Ings versus the three centre-backs, he just managed on the first two goals, which he scored both with his head, to find little gaps between the three centre-backs as the crosses came in, right? So he'd run to Koscielny's right and get between Koscielny and Xhaka, or to Koscielny's left and get between Koscielny and Lichtsteiner. And both times he managed to evade both centre-backs to meet the cross. So I thought that was really telling, right? That you could kind of tell that it was easier to pick on the non-traditional centre-backs by doing that. And then the other thing is I mentioned Redmond and Armstrong. It seemed to me like if you've got three centre-backs and they're all dealing with Danny Ings and you've only got two central midfielders, so Torreira and Guendouzi, Redmond and Armstrong did a really clever job of going in between the defensive line and the midfield line. And Xhaka and Lichtsteiner never really followed them out there. So what kept happening was Redmond especially could receive the ball like 15 yards away from the centre-backs but behind Arsenal's midfielders and then drive forward and have them backpedaling. And then he would serve it out wide to, say, Matt Targett, like the left wing-back. And then everybody's running backwards and Targett can cross it in early. So just by exploiting that space, I think Southampton did a really good job of confusing the Arsenal defence.
And is that something that you think should be of continued concern for Arsenal then? Like, do you think that maybe we'll see them dip into the transfer market when the window opens, maybe just to get a bit more depth at center back? Or do you think it is just a sort of one-off situation of, we had some injuries, we have some suspensions, so we have to make do?
It's quite rare to have two of your starting centre-backs suspended, right? So it could just be that they're just unlucky this weekend, right, to have both Socrates and Mustafi suspended. And then Koscielny's back from injuries, then you got three centre-backs. So I don't imagine that they'll be desperate to sign someone, but I'll bet if there's someone available at the right price, Unai Emery would happily add to his pile of centre-backs so that this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I just wonder how like, can you passively go after a center back that fits the system that Unai Emery wants to play? I guess that's a question for the executive directors at Arsenal who will be fulfilling that end of the job since Unai Emery was not hired to handle such things.
Oh yeah, I forgot it's a whole new world at the Emirates, isn't it?
Mislintat and the other one whose name I never remember.
The other one.
Yes. but flipping it around, were you surprised, as I was, to see Southampton sort of, again, I always go back to this, and this might be my new reference, but it was, to me, shades of when Klopp first took over at Liverpool and you started seeing those players really embracing the pressing philosophy. It felt like you saw that same thing with Southampton, where from the go they were charging plays down, and it wasn't just like, two people would put pressure on, and if it didn't work, then everybody fell back. It felt like the whole team had kind of bought into it and understood the system, and so it felt like it was consistently a problem for Arsenal, exacerbated, as you've already said, by the center back kind of change up that then you don't have the consistency you usually have there, which like further causes problems.
Yeah, it's always fascinating, isn't it, to watch a team be coached by a coach who's really known for high pressing. If anyone's not familiar with Hasenhüttl, he was the RB Leipzig coach for the past 2 seasons. So there aren't many more pressing teams than RB Leipzig, right? And so, yeah, to see it be really workable only his second game in charge, I think is super impressive. You could see Danny Ings, who I'm going to assume has had a lot of what I guess you'd call it pressing coaching while with Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp. He's leading the line, so I think that's a good fit for Hasenhüttl to get it working nice and early. But then everything else still has to happen behind him, right? And I think also it looks to me like Hasenhüttl has deliberately looked at what he's got available at Southampton, and whatever they were doing under Mark Hughes doesn't matter anymore, and he's made quite a lot of changes. Like there's a young I've forgotten his name. I think it's Yann Valeri, young French right back who he's got playing right wing back. Like Matty Targett suddenly in there at left wing back. I think there were 6 changes from the Mark Hughes team to the first team that Hasenhüttl picked to play against Cardiff. So it really seems like he's come in and said, "This is what we're doing." Danny Ings knows it. Follow Danny Ings. Away we go. And to get this win against Arsenal, I think, if anything, it just it makes Hasenhüttl look good, right? So in some ways, he's really lucky that they had those Arsenal defensive suspensions, and now it adds a lot of juice to the project, right? Like it just makes it look like it's definitely working. Now maybe more players buy in, more fans buy in. So it could just be like the little kickstart that they needed. Did you see the story that there were free beers
drinks
for the fans?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a simple but brilliant idea to get everybody, especially when you're pressing, right? You want the energy of the crowd. A drunk crowd's a bit more energetic, I would imagine, in the first 10, 15 minutes.
I would say that's probably true. On Match of the Day 2, who's the guy who usually hosts Match of the Day 2?
Oh, Chappers?
Sure. Is that his name?
Yeah.
He just goes by Chappers?
Yeah.
He was making a point. He had two. I think
he's like the Madonna of the BBC.
Okay, yeah, I would have gone the Adele, but that's fine. I did enjoy. Yeah, he bringing up the beer issue. He said it's not rocket science. That maybe that would go over well. And his other point, which I think resonates, maybe again going back to Manchester United, is that a manager who looks like he's having fun is the type of manager that you want to cheer for and play for. And I really enjoyed Hasenhüttl trying as hard as he could not to over-celebrate. I think the pundit or the commentator during the game called it like going full Jurgen Klopp, but he definitely was like right up to that line of he would like sprint the 15 yards and then like kind of quietly remind himself like, oh right, be calm, be calm. And I think was like literally telling himself like we see managers do the calm it down gesture a lot of the time, but it was the first time I've seen a manager telling himself that, using that gesture. I very much enjoyed that too.
I mean, I think we're going to enjoy watching Southampton under Hasenhüttl as well, because there's a lot of talent there, and to see players like Redmond charging, really dribbling and driving at opposition defenders. I think Redmond's a great, really great player who could maybe play for a higher level team, but if he's going to be emboldened at Southampton, that's going to be fun to watch. And then I'm also a fan of Højbjerg as well. He had the through ball to Shane Long before Long chipped it to the back post for Charlie Austin for the winning goal in the 85th minute. But just the vision on Højbjerg to thread a pass through like that, I think we're going to see the best of players like that under Hasenhüttl. He said, doing the opposite of what Hasenhüttl did by not celebrating too soon. I've got fully carried away with the Saints under Ralph Hasenhüttl.
Well, I'm going to take it one step further because in that game, I think they were talking about how he was offered the Bayern Munich job, or was maybe approached, if not offered, approached about it, and turned it down, saying like he didn't think he was ready yet. But it did make me wonder. Like, do you think larger clubs would benefit from going after coaches like Hasenhüttl? Because it does feel like there's this element of, say, Manchester United again as an example. Like, it feels like for that club, because of what happened with David Moyes, now they've embraced this idea of you have to have the big name. The biggest name is what is most important, and not maybe the ideas behind that big name. And so to watch Southampton, it did feel like a club that was a little bit resurrected and a little bit buying back into a new exciting style that maybe we haven't seen since Pochettino, or maybe the better part of the Koeman era, such as it was. So I keep wondering why those types of coaches don't get looks from those larger clubs, Bayern notwithstanding.
I mean, I think it's increasingly going to be a possibility, right? Because I think it's obviously more complicated than this, but it seems to me that the most successful coaches, especially when they first land, it's all about a philosophy that you can identify. And then even if things don't go right, you can say, this is what we're working towards, right? Like Klopp in his first season at Liverpool could say, this is what we're working towards. You've seen the way I like to play. This is where we're going. And even after losing to Cardiff in the first game with that horrible defensive mistake, I don't know if you've seen it. It's really, really bad. Hasenhüttl can still say, this is what we're doing, right? And then now we've got the first fruits of it. Then it's just more like maybe they're not going to be winning every game because they're still a team that is just above the relegation zone now. But they've always got a plan and something you can work towards. And I think that just makes more sense to fans and to media and to everybody else to know that there's a project. Even like Berhalter for the US, that might work, having something that where someone has a plan and everybody's just getting on board with the plan. And I think someone like Mourinho or Van Gaal, no one quite believed in the plan, or maybe there wasn't one.
Aside from Mourinho, I wonder who the last manager is to look like they're not having any fun but still succeed. Because you look around, Eddie Howe is still he's an enthusiastic young manager who I think a lot of people believe in, and I think Nuno at Wolverhampton. I'm wondering, is it Ancelotti because he has no facial expressions aside from his eyebrows? Maybe it's Ancelotti. Maybe that might be my answer.
So you're not so much interested in a coaching philosophy or a tactical philosophy, just in a manager looking like they're having fun.
Yeah, I've learned nothing from Manchester United. Yes, that's exactly what I want. I just want somebody who's running around cheering and stuff.
So all these coaches are wasting their time with their A license and their pro license. They all just need to go to improv classes or something to just learn how to express joy and delight.
Yes, and they should do that. I guess tactics are kind of important too, I suppose. Or maybe, here's a quick transition for you, Daryl. Or maybe it's just important to look enthusiastic and then draw up masterful set pieces.
Oh, yes. Actually, I don't know how enthusiastic Lucien Favre is at Borussia Dortmund, but I do know he has plenty of experience. So I got a quick look at Dortmund's 2-1 win over Werder Bremen. It did involve Christian Pulisic for a couple minutes. He came on just right at the end. And it did involve Josh Sargent for, I want to say, about 8 minutes. Mm-hmm. He came on with Bremen chasing the game 2-1 down. All he really did was foul Rafael Guerreiro and pick up a yellow card. But still great to see him out there, right?
I'm just saying, if you score in your debut, the expectation is that you continue that streak. So I think now we're in a state of Josh Sargent crisis where he has failed to score, Daryl, in his last game.
It's the other type of ginger burn.
Yes.
But the big takeaway, the big thing I think people should watch from this game has nothing to do with Pulisic, nothing to do with Josh Sargent. It's the Paco Alcácer goal in the 19th minute that made it 1-0 for Dortmund. Again, they eventually won 2-1. But there's this great goal where Dortmund have a free kick on the right. Jadon Sancho has won it. That's the bad news if you're a Pulisic fan. Left-footed Rafael Guerreiro is standing over it, and right-footed Marco Reus is standing over it. Guerreiro runs up, fakes like he's going to take it, then sort of runs past it, looking all annoyed. Again, acting important, right? Looking very annoyed. Then everybody braces for Marco Reus to take it right-footed, but then Guerreiro spins around, comes back, and takes it left-footed anyway. And from what I can tell, the Dortmund players were all in on this. So they've got the run on the Bremen defenders while staying on side, and it lands on for Paco Alcácer to score.
Yeah, I mean, again, as you said, it is Guerreiro really selling it, because it looks for all the world like it was a blown play, that it was maybe supposed to be played in, and then he would cross it low from the end line. And the way he just kind of turns around and trudges back as though he's super annoyed that ball wasn't played or that something wasn't set, and then to take it really, really quickly, really without much of a look, and just kind of assuming that everybody's executing the game plan and still on the same page. It requires a good bit of acting, but also a good bit of trust that everybody is doing what they need to do.
Yes, and here comes the cross.
Now, going back to like my Wolves being 1 point behind United question, what would you have said going into this game if I had told you that Josh Sargent would play more minutes than Christian Pulisic?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose we should be pleased, right? Mm-hmm. But that means I'd be hoping that Josh Sargent played 92 minutes. Maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because instead it's Pulisic subbing on, in like the 89th or something like that for Rafael Guerreiro, ostensibly to see the game out and maybe kill off a little bit of time. Not exactly what you wanted to be happening there. I guess Max Philippe coming out of the 92nd was probably the one that was mostly the time-wasting one. But still, it does have that vibe of, things maybe just not quite clicking, and Pulisic not quite getting those minutes we want to see. But then I've heard the counter-argument of, or maybe Jadon Sancho is just that good of a player and that special of a player that Pulisic now finds himself behind a guy who could be maybe starting for Man City next season if they utilize whatever like various contract loopholes they've put into that deal.
Yeah, and Sancho actually had the assist for the Marco Reus goal that made it 2. I have one other theory for you on Pulisic. Did you see the story? I think it was on Spanish radio, and then I saw it translated, that Atletico Madrid had contacted Dortmund about signing Christian Pulisic, and were basically told we've already got a deal in place to send him to England next season.
Yep.
And part of me wonders if the reason for Pulisic's lack of minutes is just that he's no longer part of the long-term project because they've already got some agreement to sell him. So maybe, I don't know what the Sancho deal is with Man City, but if they see Sancho as the future and Pulisic as a guy we're going to sell in a few months, maybe that affects the selection order.
I think that's a very astute observation because, I think if you go back to like when Robert Lewandowski was clearly going to let his contract run down, wasn't going to sign a new deal, Dortmund weren't going to sell him, so then he moves to Bayern on a free. You really can't replace Robert Lewandowski, at least not immediately, and at least not in that season. And therefore, you can't really just have him sit on the bench until his contract expires. Whereas with Pulisic, it feels like because of the position he plays and the role he plays within that team, there are sort of like semi-replacements or players who can do a similar job or play a slightly different position but still execute the game plan. And so I think you're right that maybe there's that element of, we can have Jadon Sancho and Guerreiro come in and we've got other options out wide. So, if you want to leave, you can leave and we'll keep you training until then so you don't get hurt and we don't risk, downing your value at all. I feel like that could definitely be an explanation, even if it's kind of a bummer.
I mean, it seems that Pulisic plays in the Champions League. I'm not sure quite why they've settled on doing that. So maybe we get to see him in the round of 16 for Dortmund.
Man, it is such a bummer with modern soccer, though, and the way business like entwines itself that like I also wouldn't be surprised, not saying this is what like guarantees his selection, but I wouldn't be surprised if City do have a buyback clause for Jadon Sancho, if it's like, but if he plays 90% of every Bundesliga game or something like that we have to pay double what we've already previously agreed to, or like you always have to factor in the contract considerations as much of a depressing reality as
so
that might be.
Maybe Champions League minutes don't count.
That could be. Or maybe it is like if Pulisic plays in 90% of Dortmund's Champions League games, then likely Chelsea have to pay even more money to get him.
All right. Some good speculation here on the Total Soccer Show.
Yeah, it's what we're all about. Blind speculation. Why not?
Well, luckily, one of today's sponsors is more about facts.
Very luckily.
And proper reporting, because today's show is sponsored by The Athletic. We've talked about The Athletic before, Taylor.
We sure have. We've talked about and to people from The Athletic.
So The Athletic is, I'm going to introduce it to people just in case they aren't familiar with it. To me, it is becoming one of the mainstream sports sources, and especially soccer sources in the United States. They keep adding writers and editors. The soccer vertical is really growing on The Athletic. You got Paul Tenorio breaking stories. You got Mickey Turner breaking stories about the various, the Yedlin case with the solidarity payments. I don't know, in a very short time, it's become a very big source of soccer news and analysis.
I would agree with that. And I enjoy seeing all of those like breaking news from The Athletic. The Athletic reports that, especially in regards to off-season trades and transfers and such in Major League Soccer. It's very good for that. But it is also very good for just like team-by-team analysis and thoughtful analysis at that. It's not just, this team is the best and here's why, but you get more different looks at clubs. For example, Carl Anka writing about Manchester United. If you're a United fan, as I am, who's a little bit bummed out by things, he wrote the 7 players who could serve as Manchester United's backbone for years to come, and sort of looked at the players who, like, come 2020-2021 season, which happens to be, I believe, the final year of Mourinho's contract, or maybe the year after the final year of Mourinho's contract. These like young players who could be in their prime or around their prime that could kind of be there to form the spine of that team. It is a more optimistic read if you're a United fan looking for something to be happy about. Yeah,
I also read it thinking, maybe Mourinho should be doing better with this core of players. I also read Jeff Ruter's story about the USL Players Association that has been formed. So the USL players for the championship level, so the second division level, they've formed essentially a union to try and negotiate a CBA, their first CBA, to get better working conditions for USL players. I actually think that's a really important story in American soccer.
I do too. That's why I talked about it the last time we did an Athletic ad.
Oh, did you? Was I not with you?
You were not. It was last week for Felipe's show.
Oh, I still haven't listened to that show. So, yeah, I'll make sure to listen to that.
It's okay. Just shots fired at Felipe because clearly you don't value his opinion or input. No, that's fine. I'll just let him know.
I was saving it for a special occasion. I normally do my podcast listening when I'm walking the dog. I don't have a dog to walk here, so I'm kind of stuck for when to listen to podcasts.
And plus, the elements outside seem like they're so conducive to just fun walks around the city.
They sure aren't.
Right, so if people would, instead of walking around the cold weather, if they'd rather stay inside and read The Athletic, they can definitely do so, and they can do so at a discount, courtesy of the Total Soccer Show.
That's it. You get a 40% discount on an annual subscription if you go to theathletic.com/TSS December. So TSS December is all one word. Theathletic.com/TSS December. That's going to be in the show notes. 40% off an annual subscription. We've said this before, but by supporting The Athletic, you'll, one, get access to the best soccer writing, breaking stories, great analysis. You'll be supporting the journalists who write for The Athletic. So you'll be supporting the soccer industry. You'll be supporting the Total Soccer Show because you'll be supporting one of our sponsors. Mm-hmm. And we kind of fall into the second category as well because we are occasional contributors to The Athletic. I actually have a story on my laptop that's half written here that should be published later this week on The Athletic.
You should probably try to finish the other half first. That's just my expert opinion.
Before I send it in?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't like it when you send half-written stories.
Not so much. That is the editorial quality you can expect from The Athletic. No half-finished stories. So thank you to The Athletic for sponsoring the show and for putting out quality content and for putting out quality breaking news stories as well.
They have a team of goons that comes for you if you send half-written copy.
It's just George in disguise?
George comes and bashes up your computer.
I do it. So yeah. So I want to get to our next topic, but first, you really helped me with. There's the old saying. I think I learned it from Usual Suspects of the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist. Something like that. I feel like the greatest trick Jose Mourinho has ever pulled is convincing the world that his squad isn't very good.
Yeah, Paul Pogba's not even good enough to start.
I know, right? Oh, man. Times is tough. Times is tough. Well, maybe Paul Pogba will be starting for Manchester United in the knockout round of the Champions League. That draw has taken place. We've got the fixtures set up. Let's discuss, shall we, Daryl?
We do. Okay, so the round of 16 is coming for you in February. Not till February, but a lot of great games in the round of 16. If this is your first Champions League, then welcome. It will be played over 2 legs. Mm-hmm. Luckily, it's going to be in a way that lets you watch. Essentially, there's 2 games on a Tuesday, 2 games on a Wednesday. Then 2 weeks later, 2 games on a Tuesday, 2 games on a Wednesday. So you won't have that weird inundated feeling that we used to have where there's too many games happening at once. I thought maybe a good way to run through the draw would be to take our pick of which game we should watch each day.
Sure. All right.
You ready for this?
So first up, it looks like on February 12th, we've either got Manchester United hosting PSG or Roma hosting Porto.
I mean, come on. It's Manchester
Roma,
United
Porto.
hosting
Oh, okay.
PSG,
I see what you've done.
Right?
Yeah.
It's got to be. Mourinho's going to try and, lock it down and stop Neymar and Mbappe coming through. And then the fullbacks are going to be like Young and Valencia or Darmian or someone. And PSG are going to come storming through.
Yep. I mean, and I think that is the reason to watch is to see if on a European stage, on a European evening, with Mourinho having lots of time to prep, if his team can execute this, like the defensive game plan that you know that they're going to play. The other question I have is, will they be as defensive with the first leg being at home, or will they just try to get out of there with a 1-0 win, knowing that is a very good result when away goals matter as they do?
And can the long legs of Matic keep trying to poke the ball away from Verratti?
Yeah, or is he even aware that a game is happening? Because several times against Liverpool, it seemed like maybe he wasn't. I would also say the interesting wrinkle that it doesn't. This is a strange way to put it, but it doesn't necessarily add anything to what's happening on the field. But it's an interesting thought experiment for me. Is I'm kind of looking at this as the what could have been derby, because there were the stories, I bought into them, that Jose Mourinho was going to end up at PSG after he left Chelsea. There were stories that Thomas Tuchel at one point was going to take over Manchester United, that he had been interviewed for that job.
He would have been good, I think.
So it would have been really interesting to see this fixture with the coaching situations reversed, because PSG under Mourinho in Ligue 1, would they be able to be that defensive? Or would it really just be his thesis statement of, if we just focus on defense and then let the attack do whatever it wants? Has there ever been a league that seemed more suited to that than Ligue 1 with PSG in charge? And then similarly, Thomas Tuchel at Man United, lots of interesting wrinkles there.
I'm imagining lots of Mourinho versus Neymar arguments about tracking back.
Yeah, that checks out. Oh my! Trying to turn Neymar into a defensive midfielder. That should be fun.
All right, so on the Wednesday, February 13th, we have, this one's tougher, Spurs hosting Dortmund, and then at the same time, Ajax hosting Real Madrid.
I think we will have to watch Spurs v. Dortmund, because I'm calling that the battle for America, because we know so many Americans, so many of our friends in the United States love Tottenham. And then there is also the number of young Americans connected to Tottenham. Dortmund, obviously, with Pulisic and the relationship there. So I do feel like there's going to be a lot of interest in this game from an American perspective.
Who plays more minutes, Cameron Carter-Vickers or Christian Pulisic?
Equal? No, I'm kidding. It will hopefully be Cameron Carter-Vickers. Kidding again. It will be Christian Pulisic. But I will say the Ajax Madrid game is pretty intriguing, because it does feel like if ever there were a chance for Ajax to eliminate Real Madrid from a knockout round competition in the Champions League, it is maybe this season, given how poor Real Madrid have looked at times. Yeah,
I'm excited for that matchup too. I've got some other thoughts on that game. We're going to do 3 things to look out for, right? 3 things we'll be watching for later on. Okay, then a couple of weeks, the following week, 19th of February, you've got Lyon versus Barcelona, and at the same time, Liverpool versus Bayern Munich. Which game do we hope Turner airs?
We definitely hope it's Liverpool, Bayern Munich. No disrespect to Lyon, Barcelona. I know lots of Barcelona fans will be excited about that one. But it's Liverpool's contrasting style combined with Jurgen Klopp's, I would guess, dislike or urge to beat Bayern Munich. That will be strong. Bayern Munich, similar to Real Madrid, are certainly not the juggernaut we've seen in seasons past, but still have that
Thanks,
capability.
Nico Kovac.
Yeah, exactly. But still have that capability of playing very, very, very good soccer when they rise to the occasion, basically. But the other thing that I think is strangely very fascinating about this one is that it's a game with, this is the best way I can explain it, is with potentially maybe a lot at stake, because for Bayern, obviously, if they get trounced and knocked out of this round, they're not doing well in the Bundesliga. That does feel like maybe a lot more questions, very public questions, start getting asked of Niko Kovac. Jurgen Klopp less so, that if you're Liverpool and you get knocked out by Bayern Munich, maybe it's not as big of a deal. But if, say, Liverpool don't win the Champions League or don't make it past Bayern Munich and then fail to stay at the top of the table, maybe City end up winning the title again, suddenly it is and if Liverpool, whether or not they do well in the FA Cup, it is still the case that then you're looking at another season of not winning the title, getting knocked out fairly early in the Champions League. Are there question marks around Jurgen Klopp, or is he solidified now where... I'm being serious.
Suddenly you're projecting a lot of negativity for a team that's top of the table.
That's why I'm saying potentially maybe, because I don't think that he's actually under threat right now. But we know how quickly things can change. And it is the case that, say, Liverpool go on a skid and finish third and get knocked out by Bayern Munich in the round of 16. I do think there will be people out there who think, okay, Klopp's taken us to this point, now we got to find somebody to take us to the next level. I don't think that's the right way of thinking, but I see those headlines forming if things don't go well for Liverpool.
All right, I'm going to take us off this path and just remind everybody that Lyon-Barcelona will be a really good game. This is the Lyon team that held Man City, that seems to get their tactics right quite a lot. So Lyon-Barcelona, I think, could be a really exciting game.
All right. So you're going to watch Lyon-Barcelona. I'll watch Liverpool versus Bayern Munich?
Yeah, we'll have two screens in the office anyway, right?
Yeah.
The following day.
Well, I was going to say, and for what it's worth, I firmly expect Liverpool to win that game and win that fixture overall.
You've already dug that hole. You can't climb out.
Oh no, I'm happy to be in that hole. I just want it to be clear that I'm not saying that's what I think will happen. That is just, people love a narrative, and newspapers more than anyone else, and people who sell the headlines love that narrative. And the idea of, is Jurgen Klopp in crisis? Is Liverpool in crisis? You know those headlines are waiting to be written. Whether or not it's justified, I think that's a story that will happen if things don't continue to go well for Liverpool.
On the Wednesday, the 20th. You've got Atletico Madrid versus Juventus and Schalke versus Man City.
This is one that I don't really know which one I want to watch. So I'm going to leave it to you, Daryl. Which one do you think we should be watching?
If Weston McKennie started, I'm watching Schalke Man City.
I agree. All right. I'm good with you on that one. Let's do that.
If Haji Wright is starting, I'm definitely watching Schalke Man City.
Also that, yeah. I'm good with you there. Yeah, I feel like fewer options for Americans starting in Juve Atletico.
Yeah, it's weird, right? But still, it's two good games. I think there's always too many good games in the Champions League.
I mean, it is the knockout round.
What are your things that you're looking forward to seeing? 3 things that you're looking forward to seeing in this knockout round.
I think, strangely, even though it has not been a good season thus far, I am looking forward to hopefully seeing Weston McKennie against Manchester City. Because it does feel like he is the one that Tedesco has been trying in different places, and sometimes that can be a bad thing. But it can also be that he is the player that Tedesco has the most faith in, as to say, look, you can execute a game plan. Why don't you try this? Okay, why don't you try that? Maybe I can fit you here. It doesn't feel like he's just trying to shoehorn him in. It feels like he's aware of what Weston McKennie brings and is trying to figure out which hole most needs to be plugged by Weston McKennie. Does that make sense? Yeah,
I actually had a similar thing in my notes that I want to see McKennie versus Man City because there's just lots of opportunities for him to run around and make slide tackles.
All right. I mean,
there's a lot. They make you chase the ball, right? So there's going to be a lot of ball chasing, and I think McKennie is like one of the best ball chasers around. So to see, or at least one of the most enjoyable ball chasers around, because he always is willing to go to that last ditch slide tackle, maybe sooner than other players are willing. So yeah, to watch Weston McKennie chase Man City around could be good fun.
All right. What else are you looking forward to?
I am looking forward to in the Ajax Real Madrid game, Frankie de Jong versus Luka Modric, to see who can be the most impossible to dispossess and who can play the most bizarrely impossible passes. That's a showdown.
Who's your money on there?
I mean, still Luka Modric, but Frankie de Jong at least will give him a run for his money.
All right. I like that one. I forget how much you love Frankie de Jong. and everything that Ajax are bringing to the table. Which it is why I think it would be. The Champions League is always interesting when you get the unheralded teams starting to make waves and making progress. I don't know if Ajax are strong enough to knock out Real Madrid, but it does feel like it's on the table. And so with that in mind, I look forward to that game very much. And I look forward to Frankie de Jong outplaying Luka Modric. There, I said it.
I'm also looking forward to Jadon Sancho's return to England.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be really interesting because English people are a lot more aware of him now, obviously, after he's been playing for the national team. So to see him go to Tottenham, which I actually don't know if it will be at Wembley Stadium or at the Spurs new stadium, but to see Jadon Sancho back in England, I think there'll be a lot of attention on him, and that will be part of the big narrative around that game. Hopefully we see a Pulisic-Sancho combo, but you never know.
Yeah, and I would say just in more generally, I'm just really excited for that game. That might be the game that I'm most excited for in the knockout round because it feels like two teams that play very exciting soccer and very fun to watch soccer, but two managers who are not above changing things up when they feel like they need to be changed. That could be like Mauricio Pochettino saying, you know what, I just had in my gut that this starting 11 works better, or he might throw something out completely different than what we've seen. And I feel like both teams have the depth and the sort of soccer IQ within their squads to be able to execute a variety of different approaches. So how they sort of tinker and adjust throughout that first game, and then obviously heading into the second game, do they change things based on that first result? It just feels like it's going to be a lot of nuance in there that I look forward to breaking down for way too long.
I got 7 words for you.
What's that?
Dele Alli, Axel Witsel, 50-50 ball.
Oh boy. That I think that is just scientifically a thing that leads to an explosion.
Yeah.
And then another one from I don't know if it's become clear in this episode, but I root for Manchester United. Have I made that clear?
You mentioned it. Yeah.
Okay. I one of the things that bummed me out the hardest, I think I told you this, when we were texting back and forth this weekend, is that I had the realization that no result against Liverpool, they could have lost 8-0, and I don't think Mourinho would have been fired. I don't know if I can say the same about this PSG result. I still think he makes it through until they are mathematically eliminated from the Champions League. But it does feel like...
You mean from qualifying for next season?
Yes, from qualifying for next season. Yeah, sorry. But it does feel like... And then obviously part of that is... And then if you win the Champions League, then you obviously qualify for the next one. And so being knocked out by PSG in emphatic fashion in the knockout round would then close off one of those routes, but also does feel like the type of result that you can't really hide if you're Ed Woodward. Not to say that you can hide any result in the Premier League, but being eliminated by PSG or being beaten up at home by PSG is something that, because it's the Champions League, you're going to have that much more eyes on, and it will make that much bigger headlines that it's really not one where you can just explain it away as Paul Pogba got a haircut and didn't look as into it as we would like.
Yeah, I'm much more willing to go with you on the Mourinho in crisis headlines than the imaginary Jurgen Klopp in crisis headlines.
Again, that's why I said potentially, maybe, theoretically, possibly. I don't think that happens. And again, for what it's worth, I'm very happy with Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool because I think he makes the Premier League more exciting. I think they are the only rival right now to Manchester City winning the title, and I think that will be the case for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, you really rescued it. So good. All right, Taylor, anything else to discuss?
I'm not afraid to live in my hole. I'm happy down here. Whatever. I'm going to go watch Roma Porto.
Anything else you want to touch on the Champions League?
No, that's about it for me.
All right, then does that do us for this episode of the Total Soccer Show?
I believe it does.
All right, so if you did tune in looking for a Liverpool Man United analysis, that is coming with Taylor's guest on a later show. Mm-hmm. For now, Taylor, I'll just say thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again later this week.